Welcome, cadets, to the State of Horizon Lunar training video. In this instructional video, Houston will provide instruction on procedures for getting to the moon using Ad Astra technologies. It is highly recommended to use a mod like Roughly Enough Items or just enough items to view recipes. Please listen closely, and remember mod packs may change recipes, processes, or add new blocks.
Alright everyone, so today we're going to be learning how to get to the moon. Now, getting to the moon is a complex process that has a lot of involved and moving parts, so let's hop right into it. The first thing we're going to need to do is find a way to generate power to manufacture parts. The rocket, the spacesuit, and all the parts in between have a lot of parts that require manufacturing. And our first step is the coal generator. Crafted like this device turns coal into electricity. You put coal into here, it begins to generate electricity over here. Once you have electricity, you can make a block called the compressor. Made with just some ingots and some pistons, this block compresses ingots into plates. You just put an ingot into the left-hand slot, and it will slowly convert your ingots into plates. This mod uses a lot of plates, so it's important to make a good amount of them. In order to transfer power from one block to another, you could either use a steel cable, which does require plates, or you can place the blocks directly touching one another. So this generator has power, and if I place a compressor directly next to it, it will start getting that power. Once you have power and once you have plates, we can make our next advanced machine called the blast furnace, specifically the Atronic blast furnace. It is crafted like this, using iron plates, so creating the compressor is a must. This is what the UI looks like. Its primary purpose is to combine carbon and iron together to make steel. To do so, you take iron ingots and place them in with coal. But it's not doing anything, because it can work as an electric blast furnace too. So you must come to this button up here, and it is currently on blasting. If you click it, you can turn it into alloying. Now, it will start making steel. Like so. And it is 1-to-1. 1 iron and 1 coal makes 1 steel. Once you have the compressor and the blast furnace, you can start making plates, steel, and steel plates, which are all incredibly important in the Ad Astra mod. With these devices, we can then turn to personal equipment, specifically the spacesuit and extra gear. The spacesuit is probably going to be one of your most critical components. It will protect you from the vacuum of space and provide you with oxygen to breathe. The helmet is crafted with steel plates and glass pane. The boots and pants are crafted with steel plates and any kind of wool. The spacesuit is going to be crafted with steel plates and wool again, but also a gas tank and oxygen gear, which themselves are composed of rods and plates. In addition to your spacesuit, you will need extra equipment for your journey. Some examples are here, like soul torches. In oxygenless environments like the moon and outer space, fire struggles to burn because fire requires oxygen for its chemical process. However, soul torches do not require oxygen. They use souls, so you can burn souls in space for light. The TI-69 is not a calculator, but a device that tells you information about the current celestial object you are on. For instance, it is currently 7:12 a.m. There's oxygen here, 15 degrees, and the acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. This is because I'm currently on Earth, and it will change depending on which object you're on. Extra gas tanks are incredibly important. Your spacesuit can only hold so much oxygen, so bringing extra gas tanks gives you extra oxygen to use. And extra fuel. We'll get into fuel refining in just a second. But every time you launch the rocket, it will require 3 buckets worth of fuel. Make sure you bring extra fuel with you whenever you go into space. Additionally, more information can be found in the Astroducts, a book that will be installed if you have the Patchouli, this mod, installed as well. Well, let's talk again about our spacesuit. The helmet, the pants, and the boots. They will use durability like other armor pieces. Be careful of this. If your spacesuit breaks in space, you will begin to suffocate. The chest piece doesn't use durability, but oxygen. Which brings us over to here, the oxygen loader. In order to generate oxygen using the Ad Astra mod, you need to use an oxygen loader. Crafted like this, once again using lots of steel and plates. This is what the interface looks like. This left bar here is where water goes. This right bar here is where oxygen is. These two squares are for input and output of things that hold water, and input and output of things that hold oxygen, respectively. To load it with water, you put a water bucket in the top left slot, and it will fill up this tank here. The empty water bucket will come out, and you can just take it out. If the oxygen loader has power, it will turn the water into oxygen. Once you have some oxygen in here, you can take your spacesuit and put it in the top right slot, and it will fill up with how much oxygen you have in your tank here. This way, the spacesuit has some oxygen in it. The default spacesuit can hold 1,000 oxygen. You can also put a gas tank in here, and it will also fill up with oxygen. Now, this gas tank will not automatically supply your spacesuit with oxygen. In order to fill it up, as you can see it's currently at 80, you take your gas tank and right-click. It will drain the oxygen out of the gas tank and put it into your spacesuit, which I am now at 240 oxygen. One final note about your spacesuit. To know that it works properly, you have to put the whole spacesuit on. And you'll know it's working properly when you get a GUI in the top left showing the current state of your oxygen tanks. If you do not have this GUI, or if you're using a power armor upgrade, if you do not have a GUI telling you your oxygen cans from that, your spacesuit will not protect you from space. Next up is fuel refining. When you have the Ad Astra mod installed, you will find structures like this within the world. This is an oil spout. You can right-click the oil with a bucket to get a bucket of oil, or an oil bucket. Once you have an oil bucket, you can make the next machine a fuel refinery. Crafted like this, a fuel refinery's purpose is to turn crude oil into rocket fuel. It has a very similar GUI to the oxygen loader, except on this side, this tank is for crude oil. This side, the tank is used for rocket fuel. So you can put your crude oil bucket in the top left. It will fill up this tank. And if you provide power, once again, to your fuel refinery, it will turn it into rocket fuel. Once you have at least a bucket worth of rocket fuel, you can put a bucket in the top right and get a bucket of fuel. Remember, rockets require 3 buckets worth of fuel to launch. So you will need rocket fuel to not only get into space initially, but also to return from space. Before we move on, let's talk about this mod's interaction with other mods. Other mods might have pipes, like the Create mod here. Sometimes piping it directly into it works, like what's going on here. But sometimes it doesn't work correctly. For instance, it is not automatically exporting the fuel from the fuel refinery into this tank. As you can see, this tank is empty. Instead, Ad Astra machines thrive on interacting with inventories directly adjacent to them. So if you click on this side config button up here, it will bring up some squares down here which represent the different faces of the block. And if I select my fuel with which I wish to export, I can have the top configured to push, meaning it's going to push the contents of this tank here to an acceptable inventory to the top. So if I take this create tank and put it directly on top, it's going to start filling up with fuel, as you can see. So when it comes to Ad Astra machines, you don't necessarily want to pipe things directly in and out. You want to be using adjacent inventories. Finally, let's talk the NASA workbench and building your rocket. So, to craft your rocket, you're going to need to make a NASA workbench, which is made with a bunch of steel, crafting table, redstone torches, and iron rods. The NASA Workbench has one of the bigger GUIs in this mod. As you can see, it has a number of squares that resemble a rocket. To make a rocket, you're going to need 1 nose cone, 6 steel blocks, 4 rocket fins, 2 steel tanks, and 1 steel engine. You put them in here manually like so, the cone up top, and you know it's working because sparkles will start coming off across the NASA Workbench. The next 6 squares down are filled with the steel blocks. The leftmost and rightmost squares are filled with rocket fins. The bottom square is filled with a steam engine, and in the remaining 2 squares you put the 2 steel tanks. And then a rocket will appear in this output slot. Now if you click it, be prepared because a loud sound is going to play. And it will drop on the NASA Workbench. I was close enough to immediately pick it up, so don't be alarmed if it goes out of your mouse control. It will just drop onto the NASA Workbench like that. And you have successfully made a Tier 1 rocket. But you cannot launch this rocket without the use of a launch pad. This device here is made with steel plates and steel rods. And if you put it down, it's a 3x3 area. Once you have your launch pad and your rocket, you can right-click to place your launch pad down, right-click to place your rocket down. You can right-click to get in the rocket. You can shift to get out of the rocket. If you shift right-click, you will bring up the rocket's GUI, in which it has a place for you to put in fuel, right here, and storage. You cannot launch the rocket without fuel. But don't get too ahead of yourself once you've made your rocket. You have to make sure you have everything you need to go into space. You will, 1, need to fuel up the rocket by giving it 3 buckets of fuel. In addition to fueling up your rocket, you will need a number of items to ensure your mission goes smoothly. You will need your Minecraft essentials for exploration, like your tools and weapons, and a sufficient supply of food. As we talked about earlier, you cannot use regular torches. You will need to use soul torches if you wish to see on the moon. It is recommended to bring things like ATI-69 for informational purposes. You will need to bring an additional launch pad to get home, or else you will not be able to launch your rocket. You will also need to bring 3 additional buckets of fuel, so that way you can get home, as the rocket uses 3 buckets of fuel to launch. It is highly recommended to completely fill up your spacesuit, and to fill up extra gas tanks, so that way you can refill your spacesuit while in space. As always, the Astrodux has additional information, and all the recipes needed for the mod. So please consult the Astrodux if you are ever unsure about what you should do. Once you have all of your requirements, you can right-click your rocket. And on the left here, we have an altitude meter that tells us how close we're getting to space. Once you are in your rocket, you are good to press the spacebar to initiate the countdown sequence. Once it hits 0, we'll take off. Notice how the launch pad stays there. It is not coming with us, which is why we need to bring our own. We will launch high into the sky, and once we get to the top of our altitude meter on the left there, we will leave Earth. You'll be brought to a planet selection screen like this one. With our Tier 1 rocket, we can only go to the moon. So on the left-hand side, you will select which celestial object you wish to go to. If you click on one of the names, it will expand the menu where you can either choose to land or to create a space station. A space station is an advanced concept, but if you want to create one, it will tell you what you need, and you will need different parts depending on the celestial object. But we're going to click on the moon, which you can create a space station on the moon. Or sorry, in lunar orbit, I should say. But we're going to click land. It will change dimensions, and then we will be on the moon. While on the moon, you will be descending very quickly. As you can see, the red text is telling us to hold space to apply boosters. You want to slow yourself down, or else whenever you hit the ground, it will explode and possibly destroy some items. As you can see, we descend down and down onto the lunar surface. Assuming you landed softly enough, you will have arrived. You can shift to get off the lander, and you can right-click the lander to get back on it, or you can shift right-click to access your rocket. Make sure to take your rocket out of the lander. You can also punch the lander to get rid of it. Welcome to the moon. As you can see, we can view Earth at all times because the moon is tidally locked to the Earth. We can see the vast array of stars with no atmosphere to hinder it, and obviously there's the sun. If we check our TI-69, it tells us that there is no air on the moon, it is very cold on the moon, and there is only 1.569 meters per second squared acceleration due to gravity. Meaning, you can jump very high on the moon. Now, on the moon, there might not seem like a whole lot, but there are still a number of dangers. First up, if you did not bring enough oxygen, you will run out of oxygen before you have accomplished your mission and possibly die. So that's why it was essential to bring backup gas tanks. If you did not bring enough food, you might run out of food and starve to death, which is why you should bring ample food. It is also to keep in mind that despite the lower acceleration due to gravity, you can still accelerate to dangerous speeds. Meaning if you fall high enough distance, you will still take fall damage. Do not let the slower acceleration fool you. Now, on the moon, there's a number of unique points of interest. There are towers of villagers called Lunarians, with which you can trade. They not only accept emeralds, but also a unique material called ice shards. These towers have a number of useful blocks and even chests on higher levels, but you'll have to loot those chests yourself to see what they contain. In addition to the towers, you can also find subterranean Lunarian villages, which have these little glass bubbles at the top. If you descend down into it, you will see that there's a number of little rooms, which have various building blocks and maybe even chests, as well as more Lunarian villagers with which you can trade. In addition to the Lunarians, there are also ruins you can find on the moon. With a little digging, you can eventually uncover an entrance down into these mysterious ruins. I will not go into them, you'll have to explore them yourself when you go on your own mission to the moon. I will say be prepared for a fight, though. There are strange creatures that can live in the dark parts of the moon. On the moon, there is unique lunar sand and lunar stone, but also soul soil is found here. Now remember, you can use soul soil to make soul torches. So even if you don't have adequate supply for the materials to make soul torches from the nether, as long as you have material to make normal torches, once you get here, you can mine some soul soil and make soul torches. The moon also has a number of unique ores, like cheese ore, which drops cheese, which can be eaten. The lunar crust is also rich with iron, so iron ore is found on the moon. The moon also has a unique ore called Desh. In Ad Astra technologies, this ore is very useful in creating fluid systems, like the water pump and Desh pipes, so it's important to grab a good chunk of this stuff, so that way you can automate stuff back on Earth. Finally, the last ore you can find is ice shards. These shards can be used for Lunarian trading, or if you go to Mars, you can create the cryo freezer and turn it into cryo fuel. That is going to conclude this video on how to go to the moon using Ad Astra. I hope this video was found useful for your own lunar expeditions. If you have any further questions, please put them in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and the best of luck exploring the galaxy.